A few weeks back, I did my best and worst of 2014, and in the video, I was talking about the movie Ouija, and what a gigantic pile of shit it was. I was disappointed because they took something as scary as a Ouija board and made just this bland, awful, terrible horror piece of crap. I had also mentioned that the reason why I was so scared of Ouija boards was because of an instance that happened when I was younger. A bunch of people contacted me. They asked what the experience was, and I thought it would be a cool little thing to reminisce and talk about. Now, I'm going back a long time. I was about 10 years old when this happened, so some fuzzy memories in there. The story that I'm about to tell is how I remember it happening. It's entirely up to you whether or not you believe it. I'm not bullshitting. I'm not trumping anything up to make it a more interesting story. I'm just telling you how I remember it happening. Like I said, I was about 10, and there was a new girl who had moved in up the street. I grew up in a very small neighborhood. We had one grade school that everybody went to, and the girl went to the grade school. And since she lived up the street from me and my other friends who lived on the street, all went up and kind of became friends with her. For the sake of anonymity, I'll say her name was Beth. So Beth was very weird. There was just something a little odd about her. She wasn't a bad person or anything. Just, one of those kids that maybe a girl who liked bugs a little too much or that kind of thing. We got through the school year and it was summertime. I don't remember how, but she had come into the possession of a Ouija board. I'm not talking any creepy family heirloom thing. I'm talking Parker Brothers Ouija board you could buy at a Toys R Us. So for all I know, she saved up her milk money and went to the store and bought a Ouija board. My parents, mother especially, were very God-fearing Christians. So messing around with a Ouija board was something that was just beyond anything that anyone should do. You mess around with that stuff, you're going to burn in hell. You listen to heavy metal music, you're going to burn in hell. You play Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to burn in hell. And I did all those things, and I think I turned out to be a pretty good person. So all the kids in the neighborhood, including Beth, knew it was probably a good idea to not tell the adults that we were messing around with a Ouija board. I think around that time, 2020 did a special about how kids were playing with Ouija boards, and next thing you know, they're sacrificing the neighbor's dog for Satan. And it was that whole religious panic of the time. So what we did was Beth owned the Ouija board, and she had it in a backpack. And we went out to this grove with the intention of playing it. Again, this was in a time when parents would throw their kids outside. You're spending too much time inside. Go outside and play. So we went outside and played. Somebody brought a folding table and chairs, and we went out to this area nearby where we had a clubhouse. I don't know why we didn't play it in the clubhouse, but we had the idea that this should be played outside. I guess we felt safer. Things went about how you'd expect. We did it two at a time. We had a table and two chairs, and one person sat at one end, one person sat at the other. They put their fingers on the, I don't know what the hell, the guide. I'll say it's the guide, the thing with the little reticle in it. And of course it starts moving around and, oh, are you moving it? No, I'm not moving it. You're moving it, and all that stuff. So just we'll get beyond that. And we started playing it, but nobody really believed that what was going on was paranormal. Everybody thought, oh, well, the other person is pushing the guide. So we contacted a spirit. And I remember we asked it what its name was. I honestly don't remember the name, but let's just say Steve. So we contacted Ghost Steve. And we asked 10-year-old questions, like we were talking to a fortune teller. When am I going to get married? What kind of car am I going to drive when I get older? When am I going to touch my first boobie? That kind of nonsense. So, we played, and eventually you do the goodbye and it goes over to goodbye, and that was that. We started doing this a little more often, and as we got more and more comfortable with it, we started asking intense questions. Also, I think there was 5 of us. And we would take turns, or 2 people play with it for a little while, and then they'd switch off. 2 more people play with it a little while, and somebody would get more time on it. Usually it was Beth, since it was hers. She'd usually sit on for like 2 rounds. We started asking more intense questions. We asked Steve when he died. We asked him how he died. And I don't remember the answers to that, but I do remember this one. We asked him what it was like to be dead. And he said cold. And I remember that because it really creeped me out. Still talking about it now, that's like the first wave of chicken skin I got just thinking about it. So after that answer, we all got significantly creeped out for the day and decided to call it quits. We came back the next day and played it. Now, the place that we played it was a little grove, so there were a lot of trees, and it was still very shaded. So even though we were outside, we weren't really in the sunlight. We went to the board one day, and now when you'd sit down to the board, you would, lack of a better description, you would like log on. So you'd sit down, two people would put their fingers, you'd put the tips of your fingers on the corners. So you'd have one person would put their two fingers on the one end of the guide, and the other person would put two fingers on the other side of the guide. We would sit down and hello Steve, and it would move over to the little hello thing, and that was kind of how it started most days. However, this time the guide would move around the board in like really weird ways. It was swirl around in circles, move in a way that had us kind of twisting our arms around, and then, we kind of pulled our hands off because it's like, what the fuck? So then we switched out the people, and now we would be like, hello, Steve. And the guide, with the people holding it, moved forward and landed in the person's lap. Like it was like pushed forward and landed in their lap. And it was weird. So hello, and whoop, move forward, land in the person's lap. And so we're like, all right, we're significantly weirded out enough for today, so we're not going to play again. So we went off and played G.I. Joe or whatever, I don't know. Came back the next day. Hello, Steve. Hello. What happened yesterday wasn't here. So we're like, well, you're saying it was somebody else and just wasn't here. All right. We asked, who else was it? And he was like, don't know. We didn't really press too much into it, and we kind of got back to the usual nonsense questions. One day we went over to Beth's, and her parents were out. So instead of going all the way to the Grove where we had been going to play, we decided to play with it in her backyard. And she had a big backyard porch. It was this big enclosed thing. So we sat down, we kind of sat around the table and, hi, Steve. And the guide started kind of moving around the board again. And we were like, hello, and it stopped moving and it went over to hello. Who is this? It was like, why are you in a new place? Because Beth's parents aren't home. Right when we said that, we heard a door slam inside the house. All of us jumped, like, fuck. So we thought that Beth's parents were home. So threw the board off the table, put it, hit it real quick, acted nonchalantly like we were all being completely guilty looking. But her parents weren't there. So we went inside the house and we're looking around and we're trying to figure out which door slammed, and we couldn't quite figure out which door slammed. Definitely a door inside the house. I mean, it was loud. As creeped out as we were, once we saw that her parents weren't there, we went back into the backyard and set the Ouija board back up again. In retrospect, it's kind of funny because we were more afraid of her parents than we were with the potential that we were messing around with a spirit. I guess it kind of goes to show kids' mindsets. We sat down at the board again and hello, who's here? And it moved around the board, and it stopped. And then it spelled out Jacob. And so we were like, okay, Jacob, who are you? And again, it asked, why are you in a new place? And we said, because Beth's parents aren't home. And this time we were like, we're getting ready to see if a door slammed. This time nothing slammed. And so it was just, it said, go back to the other place. And we said, why? And Jacob was like, that's where I died. And we were like, fuck this. We're out. We're done. Nope. The four of us left. Beth stayed at her home, and that was that. And the next day we go to see her, and she's really shaken. I'm like, what's the matter? She said that after we left, she played with the Ouija board alone. From what I gather, that's supposed to be very bad. You're always supposed to have another person there to play with. I'm just repeating what she had told us. She could have been completely making this up. She could have been bullshitting. We don't know. We weren't there. So she said she started talking to Jacob, and she asked him to do something to kind of prove that he was there. And she said nothing happened. So she put the Ouija board away, she put it under her bed, and she said every night she goes to sleep and she closes her drapes. She said the next morning she woke up and the drapes were open. So she says she got on the Ouija board and asked it, did you do that? And he said yes. We decided to kind of give it a break for a few days. And our kid curiosity got the better of us, and we went back to the Grove and started playing again. Now this time we said hello, and it was Steve again. And so we're like, okay, Steve, do you know who Jacob is? And he said, no. And we're like, well, did you see us talking to him? And he said, yes. And we said, well, what do you think of him? And he said, not safe. And we were like, what do you mean? And he just repeated, not safe. What do you mean not safe? Should we stop playing? Should we stop doing this? And he said, no. So we're like, okay, well, if he's not safe, we would think that we should probably stop playing, but whatever. We asked him more questions, nonsensical stuff. And the next day we came out to the Grove and we said hello. And this time it was Jacob again. And we were like, okay, Jacob, you said that you were killed here. And he said, yes. And we were like, how? And he said he was stabbed. Where? It was like, over there. Well, over there where? Well, he couldn't really point, and he just said over in the field. Keep in mind, if this happened today, we'd go on the internet, look it up to see, hey, was there somebody named Jacob who was murdered in such and such field? But this was back in the pre-internet days, so we had no way of really checking it up. You couldn't get 10-year-old kids going to the township building and looking up files on murders in the area and whatnot, so we kind of had to take it at face value. As we asked him more questions, the movements of the guide started to get more and more erratic. Now, usually, if you've ever played with a Ouija board, it has this weird fluidity to it. It'll go to, the letters, A, N, D, and in a very rhythmic way. It'll go and stop long enough for you to kind of, okay, A, and now it's moving very haphazardly when it would answer, how old were you when you were killed? And 20. Why were you killed? Don't know. Very just weird. The other thing about Ouija boards is, and one of the reasons why I have this feeling that there is something to them, is even if you're pushing the thing around, you could fake it and go to hello, goodbye, but to spell out some of the stuff, you kind of would have to really be good with how to fake it, because I tried to fake it once, and it was hard, and the person on the other end immediately knew that I was faking. So that kind of always made it feel like, okay, there's something to this. We had found out that Beth had been playing with the board by herself, and she'd been playing with it more and more. When we were out in the Grove, it ended up being Jacob more and more. So one of us got ballsy and said, what can you do? Make something happen. And he was like, what? And we said, make something, we don't believe that you're real. If you have any power at all, make something unusual happen. And right at that time, a bird fell out of the sky. Now, I don't mean like a bird swooped down. I mean like a bird was flying along and it died in midair and just dropped down next to us. And so we, of course, all, ah! And right when that happened, the area got cold. This was about mid-August at this point. And I mean, it got cold. It was summer, hot. I think it was like 80, 90 degrees at this point. And it wasn't a breeze blew through. We felt cold. All of us felt cold. And so looked at each other. What the fuck? Are you feeling this? What's going on? At least one of us started crying. It might have been me. I don't know. But we got really significantly creeped out. And that was it. We said, fuck this, not playing anymore. Beth continued to play it by herself. We still talked to her. We still went over and hung out and whatnot. And she would tell us creepy shit was happening. Again, wasn't there for this, going by what she told us. But she said that weird shit was happening. She put the Ouija board in her school bag and put it in her closet. And the next morning would wake up and the Ouija board was out of the bag and sitting on the bed next to her. So then she put the Ouija board back in the bag, put it in the closet, and then the next morning she woke up and it was on top of her. She said officially, fuck that. That was the last time that she messed with it. That was like too much for her. A couple weeks after that, school started. We refused to fucking play with the Ouija board again. I'm pretty sure that I don't know what she did with it. I don't think she threw it out. But a couple months later, her parents moved, and that was the end of that. Never went near a Ouija board again. Whenever I saw one, I would always get creeped the fuck out. Even if I'm in a Toys R Us and I'd see a Parker Brothers Ouija board thing, I just was like, nope, not going near it. And I've seen a couple of movies over the years, Witchboard, The Exorcist, and whatnot, who had elements that focused on Ouija boards. And it always was a little bit more creepy for me, which is why when the movie Ouija came out and it was a steaming pile of shit, I was so angry. Because me sitting here retelling the story has given me goosebumps a couple times, just thinking about it. And I'm sure there may have been other things that happened, but it was a long time ago, and this is just my recollection of it. Well, that's my Ouija board story. If it didn't creep you out, I hope it at least entertained you for a little bit. Feel free to say I'm full of shit. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just telling you what I remember from when I was a kid. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you next time.